Hey everyone, Tony D, and welcome to another Piney podcast. Okay, I can't really get any numbers. I think it's a little too early, and it's Sunday, and as we all know, state workers and the beer virus is off. So I don't expect the numbers to change other than to go down. Hospitalizations as of, I believe, Saturday are, down to 3,300. Things are going down, down, down. And we're talking the whole state here. I mean, when you talk 3,300 people are in the hospital across an entire state of millions of people with dozens of hospitals. I mean, that's not a tremendous amount of people. That's not great. I'm not celebrating it, but it's a lot lower. This is not the we're going to be overwhelmed scenario. Have to open things up, Phil. Along those lines, nothing new today. So the news in South Jersey, I actually have other non-beer virus news. If you're familiar with Gannett, they're like a media organization, and they run certain newspapers. I believe they already own the Courier Post, but they're gobbling up some of the local newspapers. For those of you who still read newspapers, I know my parents do. But this, is the general trend in media when things fall apart in any business, really. This is what happens. It all gets consolidated. And with modern technology, it's just easier this way. So I believe it's like the Burlington County Times, New Jersey Herald, Paper and Vineland, the Courier Post. So Gannett's basically going to own most of the papers in South Jersey. Which, when you look at it, what does that even mean at this point? It probably means that a lot of AP wire stories and newspapers will often get AP stories, like big stories, like beer virus story, right? You'd have to run something about it. And, you'd take that story off the AP wire and kind of surmise it for local people and add a local touch to it, what the mayors are saying and or this local leader is saying, that kind of thing. So, but understand that you're kind of getting, if anybody ever says to you, well, I read in the Courier Post X, and then I also read it in the Burlington County Times, therefore I have two different sources, you should say, well, not really. You kind of have the same source. There's not going to be a lot of daylight between those papers. That's part of the problem on the internet with your news, and part of the problem with the mainstream media. They hook onto a story and quote each other, and then it seems like you have a lot of diverse opinion, but it's really just an illusion to sell you on a narrative that they're pushing at that time. Not that I think the local papers are going to be pushing any narrative other than, this high school wrestling team won and, this new produce stand is open or whatever. But just something you should be aware of. In Belmar, people came out in droves to get their beach tags. People need to get out. And I think Phil's opening of the beach is good, but he's actually, in my view, making the problem worse by not allowing the businesses to open. Look, I've been to the businesses along the boardwalk. They're small to begin with. You can't have a lot of people in your store. You could barely fit 10 people if you really, really tried. And who the hell wants to be in a beach store in the middle of summer with, jam-packed wall to wall? So it's very simple. Open the stores and have a 2 or 3 person capacity, depending on the space, or suggest that. I don't think anybody's going to want to cram in to a tight space right after this beer virus thing. And quite frankly, it's going to be too hot for the virus to really live. If everybody's social distancing, if everybody's wearing a mask, who cares? It's too hot anyway for the virus to live. So closing down all these businesses and saying, hey, you're not going to make any money Memorial Day weekend is ridiculous. You know, people are dying to do something. You're just handing them the beach and saying, well, that's all we'll give you for now. And that's not good. And you leave the takeout places open. They have no place to eat. People are going to be taking the food back to the beach where they're not supposed to take it. And then you're going to get mad at that, and people are going to get flagged for that. The trash cans will be overflowing. You're going to have paper plates and styrofoam containers and plastic forks covered in food blowing all over the place. Does that sound very sanitary to you, Phil? I don't think so. Now, you might have a couple of guys roaming around collecting trash, or maybe you put out some extra trash cans if you've got the forethought to do that, depending on your town. But you know, people are going to descend upon the beaches because they have nothing to do. That's part of the reason these protests are going on. What else do people have to do? They've been cooped up for 2 months. They want to open their businesses. They want to go back to work. They need to, in a lot of cases. And, well, I got nothing. These people won't let me work. What am I going to do? Oh, there's a protest? Yeah, count me in. I got nothing else to do. So you're going to see protests in the Garden State. Now, they just had a video clip online. Voltaire showed it, and it was a CNN reporter. I guess he was like a stringer out in Long Island somewhere, and there was a protest about opening businesses. And, you know, some of the protesters had bandanas, some didn't. But they're out there protesting, and they see the CNN cameraman, and they're calling him fake news. Fake news. Yeah, they don't believe him at all now. I mean, before it was sort of a joke. Now they're kind of angry. The protesters are pretty angry about the fake news that's coming out of CNN. They're not stupid. They understand what has happened in the past. You've made too many mistakes, CNN. So I see that starting to happen here, because what else do people have to do? If they can't open their businesses, they can't function, right? And you're also talking about businesses that have 1 or 2 employees, so those people are out of work. And somebody pointed this out, one of the YouTubers, and I was like, yeah, that's true. You can't limit the capacity, really. I mean, you could limit the capacity in the building, but I wouldn't limit anything. Let people make up their own minds. If you want to go into a crowded store at the shore, that's your choice. It's your choice. I wouldn't do it. I would stand outside and go, well, it's too crowded. I'll wait until it thins out, or I'll go somewhere else. You know, and if you run a business, it's perfectly fine for you to put up a sign, because you decide whether or not, you know, things are safe. You decide how to run your own business. And if you decide, okay, I'm only going to have 2 people at the store at once, please social distance, I'm fine with that too. So what are we doing here? You're trying to micromanage every business in the Garden State. Meanwhile, South Jersey could totally open. We could totally open. We're nowhere near, we never got anywhere near the numbers of northern New Jersey. South Jersey is as much open spaces. The shore is windy and hot. The virus is going to blow all over the place. It's not going to get on people. You know, other than taking sensible precautions, we're just hurting the economy for no reason. And you're hurting it in a way, you're putting out all these rules that you can't even really enforce. So, again, I would urge all my South Jersey listeners to please at least send an email to Phil's office demanding that he open up things and let people decide their own deal, because we're kind of past the point here where keeping things closed makes any sense whatsoever. We have a beer virus that maybe infects 0.02% of the population. 99% of the people who have this are going to survive. The people who don't survive, we already know. they have what's called comorbidity, meaning that they have underlying medical conditions like diabetes, they're overweight, they're elderly. Yes, we get it. Those people, they need to be very careful. If you're 60, 70, 80, you should be more careful than someone who's 50 and under. I got to be a little careful. And I am. But you can't manage the state, Phil. You just can't manage millions of people. It's impossible. And the more you try to do it, the worse it will get. And the more likely it is people will bristle under this regime. Let's see, there was one other thing. Oh, yeah. So, New Jersey passed a law in 2005, and it was about sort of transparency in the state government with regards to certain records. So now some of the journalists are trying to get access to certain records because I think they're trying to dig in to see if are we over-reporting the death rates, which seems evidence is starting to pile up that death rates of the beer virus have been over-reported. Yes, you have like an older person who was dying already, who may or may not get the virus and then dies, and they immediately put down that the virus killed them. That's not necessarily true. If you were on your last legs and got the virus and then die, that you may or may not have died of the virus. So it's a bit misleading to people to pump up the numbers. And as we saw in the Project Veritas video with the investigation into New York funeral homes, they're just putting down the beer virus for anybody who's elderly who passes away, partly because the people who were tasked to investigate these deaths didn't want to investigate them, didn't want to get close to the bodies, didn't even look at them. So we may have a situation where, people are touting the death rate in this country, and it may be wildly overblown by thousands and thousands of people. And if that's the case, we don't want inaccurate numbers. If you're going to base your policy on numbers, and Phil certainly has, you have to have accurate numbers. And if people are fudging the results to get, financial incentive for hospitals or for doctors or whatever, that's not good, because first off, they're scamming the government out of money, as usual. Second off, those higher numbers make people more scared, more stressed. It's going to create a lockdown situation that lasts longer than it should, and it's going to hurt people in the long run. So the fact that they're using this 2005 law was supposed to be transparent. Now the government is using to say, oh no, we can't show you those records. We can't open up the records to you, journalists, because reasons. Because, we use the law for ourselves to find out more information about you, but now that you want to find information about your government, yeah, there's a problem with that. And that's how governments operate. That's how they always operate. They become an entity unto themselves, and then they start to protect themselves. They protect their money, they protect their jobs, they protect all kinds of things. And that's why smaller government is better. If it was a smaller government with very transparent records, you could see immediately when they made a mistake, and then they would be very apologetic. Oh, we made a mistake, so sorry about that. Thanks for pointing that out. They'd be on their way. When you have this, barrier where they could delay things, the news cycle's very quick these days. Elections happen at a certain time. All they got to do is, oh man, delay that a couple of weeks, and then we're okay. Because then people forget, or it gets buried, or a bigger news story happens. So, once again, New Jersey proves that it's a big government state with too much government, too much bureaucracy, and Phil is going to legislate himself right out of office in a year's time, I predict. I certainly wouldn't vote for him after his behavior post-lockdown, and the more he drags this out. I'm not looking to vote for another Chris Christie, but I certainly would think twice about voting for this guy. Open things up, Phil.